Okay, good morning, everyone. First up, I would like to welcome Ann Landman. Ann, are you?
Right here. Right here.
Come on up. Ann has had a long history of activism and social justice. Her career as a respiratory therapist led her to challenge corporations such as the tobacco industry and health insurance companies over the deceit and the harm they have caused the public. And she also authors a blog which has provided information on issues important to the Western Slope. So please welcome Ann.
Thank you, Norma. Thanks for coming out, everybody. I wanted to talk about the Supreme Court for a minute. Get closer. Oh, there we go. Okay, you might recall that Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito actually authored the majority opinion on the Dobbs ruling 2 years ago for the majority. And it's worth noting that in that opinion, he mentioned legislative bodies 6 times, which is 6 times more than he mentions women's bodies or pregnant people's bodies. Also recall that until the Dobbs decision 2 years ago, nothing had changed about Roe. The ruling hadn't changed, the case law around it hadn't changed. None of the rulings that reaffirmed Roe over the last 50 years had changed. The only thing that changed is the composition of the Supreme Court, the people who are on the Supreme Court. That's what's making the difference, and that makes it clear that the justices on today's Supreme Court are substituting their religious beliefs for what had long been the settled law of the land. Also recall that during Alito's confirmation hearings for the Supreme Court back in January of 2006, he told senators that he would hold himself to an even higher standard of recusals than the Judicial Code of Conduct required. He claimed he'd be an impartial judge with no ideological agenda, and he repeatedly said no president is above the law. But recently, we've seen politically charged flags flying on his properties, we've heard secret recordings, eyebrow-raising financial disclosures, and Alito is no longer even trying to hide his strongly theocratic worldview. In the summer of 2022, shortly after the Dobbs ruling was handed down, he gave a keynote address at the University of Notre Dame Law School in Rome, and he told the audience that growing secularization in the United States and around the world poses a, quote, grave threat to religious liberty. Next, we heard the secret recordings by a journalist who recorded Alito at a Supreme Court mixer in which he said that he agreed that America needs to be returned to a, quote, place of godliness. He agreed that a culture war battle is going on between liberals and conservatives and said one side or the other is going to win, and there are differences on fundamental things that really can't be compromised. So now it's clear that Alito is operating on the Supreme Court as an aspiring theocrat, and he's fighting what he sees as a zero-sum games in which his supporters are the only ones with the correct opinions. There's not even a shred of appearance of neutrality there anymore. He's violated Supreme Court ethics in so many ways that there's now just no credibility left for any of the decisions that Justice Alito makes. And he has a lifetime appointment. And so what I like to do at gatherings like this is not just come out and complain and hold signs. I'd like to stimulate some form of activism. So I went to the post office here and I bought a bunch of prepaid postcards, 53 cents each. I got 20 of them. I addressed them all to Justice Samuel Alito at the Supreme Court. 1 First Street Northeast, very easy to address, Washington, D.C. 20543. And if I'm going to hand them out. If you are short on time, just write the word resign on the back of it. But make sure to put your name and your address so they know you're a real person. If you have a little more time, you can add to the front Justice Clarence Thomas and send it in and maybe have twice the impact. But I hear that mailed items have a little more impact than filling out their web form online. If you are really short on time, you can just Google contact the U.S. Supreme Court and you'll get taken right to a web form, a contact us web form for their press, a PR office, and you can fill in and write your opinions there. But I'm going to hand these out, and if you really want to have an impact, the post office is open till 1 o'clock. You can go and get 10 more of these and give them to your friends and your family. Fill out the, address it to the Supreme Court and have them do it too. And I mean, that could magnify the impact. And in closing, I'd like to read a comment that someone named Megan left on my blog when I put up the poster for this event. She wrote, "Republicans will try to pass a nationwide abortion ban if they're in power next year. If you want to live in a country where women bleed out on their bathroom floors after being denied care for a miscarriage, or where 10-year-old rape victims have to flee the country to have an abortion, then go ahead and pretend that living in a blue state protects you and your family." So, I'm going to go out and hand out cards. You're up.
Thanks, Ann.
That's a great idea for being actively getting out that axe. Thanks, Ann. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Jan Mormon. She's the president of the Mesa County